Okay, excellent. All right, so game-based learning, trends, research, and sheer ridiculousness. I am at New Mexico State University. Thanks for reading the bio. We have a very unique thing at NMSU. It's the Learning Games Lab. We actually have a development space in the university for the creation of interactive tools, websites, simulations, games. We've been doing them for over 20 years now. It's somewhat rare. Most universities, if they do some kind of game development, will use grad students or other students to do their development, or they'll contract out to a development company. And you know, we love students, but we actually don't hire them because they have the audacity to graduate or take finals. And so everybody in our shop is a full-time professional with a degree in their field, animation, games, programming, what have you. We do a variety of content. Most recently, we've been doing a lot of math. We do science. We do food safety. We're starting a game on credit score for high school students. It will be called Night of the Living Debt. It's going to be awesome. So that's our latest project, and you can certainly learn more at learninggameslab.org if you'd like to see what kind of things we do. So let me tell you what inspires me. How many people, what's this? Okay, how many people here have played Angry Birds? Right, okay. So Angry Birds, fun little game, right? Over 1 billion downloads. You know, it's kind of like McDonald's. Once they hit 1 billion, they just stop counting. The point is, a lot of people have played this game. And the reason I am so excited by Angry Birds, it's not particularly educational. It's just a little slingshot type game where you're trying to catapult a bird into a structure and knock it down. But what excited me about this was Angry Birds was one of the first games, casual games, to have such widespread worldwide adoption. And it was not just game players who played Angry Birds, because for years now, if someone would say, do you play games? Any adult with any sense would say, no, I don't play games. I'm serious. I have real things to do in my life, right? And so people would kind of hide their gameplay. But suddenly, with Angry Birds, my mother and people like her around the world suddenly were reminded of the power of games. It was very exciting to realize that suddenly they knew how exciting it was to see your progress, to realize that you could do something now that you couldn't do when you started the game. I couldn't start at level 12, but I did levels 1 through 11, and now I can play level 12, and that's exciting. To realize that sometimes with game-based activity, you can do it while you're waiting for your child in piano, or while you're waiting for a meeting, or in a really boring talk at someone's conference, not mine, others. And you could do it in small parts. And you understood the power of a learning community because you'd see somebody else playing Angry Bird and you'd say, holy cow, I don't know how to make that bird work. How do you get that thing shut down? And you suddenly had someone you could talk to and learn from. That excites me. This is something else that excites me. My son was 6. No, he was 4 when he drew this. I picked him up at daycare, and he had been drawing. Now, if you have any experience with kids, you know when a child gives you a drawing, you never, ever say, oh, this is a beautiful picture of, and fill in the blank, because there's a very good chance you will get it wrong. It will be a dragon, and you thought it was an ice cream cone. So you never say that. What you always say when a child gives you artwork is you say, oh, I love it. Tell me about it. And so I picked him up, and I said, Carter, this is fantastic. Tell me about it. And he said, well, it's a picture of a flower, and on the left is a snowman, and this is a computer. And you use the arrows to pick which picture you want, and then you hit the blue button at the top to select it. I'm a game designer. I was like, my son's drawn an interface. I'm so proud. And at four, he was already savvy enough to understand the power of interactivity. At 4, he knew, why should I have to look at a graphic just because that's the one he wanted to draw? He knew that I should have some agency in deciding what it was that I wanted to look at and observe. At 4. And those are the people that are inheriting the work that we are doing. Let me tell you something else that excites me, Math Snacks. I have some bookmarks for Math Snacks. If you would like to learn more, they're on the way out of the door. And Dr. Karen Weiberg, who's the director of Math Snacks, is here. She'll be talking more in depth on it on Thursday if you'd like to learn more about it. Math Snacks, we just finished a 5-year development cycle on making games on the concepts that kids do not understand by the time they get to 6th grade. So we have a series of games. Game Over Gopher teaches coordinate pairs on a grid. It's a tower defense game. Monster School Bus helps them start grouping numbers, understanding fractions and decimals using a 10 frame on a school bus. Ratio Rumble really builds equivalent ratios. potions. GATE is about grouping numbers, a really important pre-algebra activity. And this is what excites me. So this was NSF funded, so we need to do a large-scale randomized trial. And so we tested it with 4 games, and we took 2 groups that were equivalent at the beginning, and the blue group was told over a 6-week period to play the games, and we had a bunch of materials for the teachers. And the green group was asked to just continue with their regular instruction. Now the blue group just integrated the games into their already existing curriculum. And you'll notice that by the time we took a second test, the blue group, who had exposure to math snacks, games, and materials, outperformed the green group. And because we're in education, we wanted both groups to get the treatment. So we then told Group B, now you all access math snacks and go ahead and integrate it into your instruction. And at the end, they were equivalent. So what was really exciting about this was, hey, we met our goal. We were able to teach math, especially difficult to understand concepts, better when these games were integrated. And it didn't matter if they were in the first 6 weeks or if they were in the second 6 weeks. At any point when it was integrated, we were able to make a change and move the needle. And that really excites me. Now, I get asked this a lot as a game-based researcher, and it's not a bad question. It's an important question. People should ask, can games help people learn? It's a very good question. You know what's another really good question? Is this one. Nobody's asking that question. Or do classrooms help people learn? Or do pencils and paper help people learn? Can group projects help people learn? Can listening help people learn? I'm hoping today that it does. Can doing a workshop with 22 other 7th graders help people learn? Because we have a lot of this going on in our schools. And these are important questions. But nobody else holds teaching methods to the same rigor that they hold educational games to. And I'll tell you my view on that, I'm fine with it. I'm fine with it. Games should be driving the harder questions. Now, these are important questions. These are questions for AERA. So those of you who are going to AERA in Chicago will get together and we'll ask about outcomes and how to measure learning. But here at SITE, I think we have a different set of responsibilities. So here at SITE, let's ask this question: what can we do? When it comes to game-based learning, how can we drive games in the classroom? How can we support their development? How can we support their use? And how can we make sure that games are being used to teach the things that can't be taught other ways? That's what we should be doing with games. All right, here we go. What can we do? Well, the first thing, we can rethink what we measure. I told you how excited I was when we got the chart and the lines went up. You always want those lines to be up. We were very, very happy. And then something amazing happened. This became the floor for us. It was a very big, expensive, hard-to-do floor that took us many years of practice and lots of different tests, but it became the floor. We should be asking, can we help people learn the content? But that is the very basic question. Because I'll tell you what else we learned in looking at the use of these games in classroom after classroom over 3 different years. We saw how the teachers' language changed as a result of teaching with the games. How they explained things to their students changed. How they talked about concepts. We think the teachers' understanding of concepts evolved as a use of their games. Communication with parents changed. How many kids come home and discuss their math worksheet with their parents? We don't think it's as many as those who come home and talk about the games they played. Self-efficacy, now we know that takes a long time to move the needle on self-efficacy. But are we changing how kids think they feel about math? How about voluntary time on task? We saw through embedded data that the kids who played the games out of class spent 1/3 of their time in those games voluntary after school without being required to. That is an amazing thing to encourage voluntary exploration of content. And how about the understanding of the value of math? I think particularly in today's standards-based climate, we sometimes get a little too focused on the content mastery and not on the mastery of all the other things and the changes we can make in education. It's time that we rethink what we measure. Oh, and that's another big one, trust in teacher. Have we changed how the students view the validity of their teacher? Okay, now I realize you have to watch your assumptions. We were talking earlier about how you assess game-based learning, and it's great to do with case studies, it's great to do with a number of things, but we also have to watch our assumptions and help other people change theirs. One of the things I do a lot when I talk is to talk to parent groups and to guardians and help them feel comfortable with the power of play. Help them feel comfortable when their child is playing Minecraft for hours on end. Help them feel comfortable and understand the value of gameplay in development and in education. And most people have an assumption about games and the dangers they can cause. And I am a game advocate. I make educational games. And I was away. It was a longer trip, one of my longer ones. I was gone 4 days. I came back Friday before Mother's Day. And my son met me at the door and said, I have a special drawing for you. This is the same one who drew the interface. I said, okay, lay it on me. I said, oh, that's so interesting. Tell me about it. And he said, well, it's a minotaur, and that's his axe and his pitchfork, and that's a dead person because it's a human sacrifice, and those are all the blood and guts that were coming out. And the stuff in his teeth, those are the body parts. Like, okay. And I will admit, the first thing that went through my mind is, what has your father been letting you do on the iPad? So I asked, and it turns out this was not from something he did on the iPad. This is because his brother had a new book, and his brother fell in love with this book and was reading it and discussing it, and it was the Odyssey. And Carter, the younger brother, took from all of that when you have a really big celebration, something really important to really honor someone big, not unlike Mother's Day, a human sacrifice is in order. So when he thought, what could I do to please my mom the most? He thought, blood and guts and body parts and teeth, yes. As you have to watch your assumptions. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some trends I'm seeing in game-based learning. And this is one of the first. Now, I have to be honest with you. I don't know if these are per se trends or just really deeply held wishes. But these are the things I think we're starting to finally see as game-based learning starts to gain credibility and acceptance. And the first is this: effective implementation is the new innovation. Who here has applied for a grant? NSF, NIH, USDA? Okay. How many here have sat on a grant review panel? Okay. So you know the question you're always asked: is this project innovative? Now, there was a time when we were starting to do this 20 years ago when I could never use the word games in a proposal. It's terrible. Nobody, in fact, when I started using the word games, I got some of the worst reviews on grants of my life. And then there came a point where we could use the word game, and there was like a 20-minute window of opportunity there where games were considered innovative simply by being a game. And now, it's not about creating a game, it's about implementing it in a realistic way. Because we know simply creating the game is not enough to be innovative. And something we learned through all of our Math Snacks work was exactly how much support was needed out there to use games in a bright way. And now we are seeing some really wonderful steps that have come up to help with implementation of games. So this is one of our teachers. We had a lot of hands-on learning, a lot of supplemental activities to Math Snacks. Part of our goal was to remove this paradigm in math instruction of someone teaching and a classroom listening. We wanted to get lots of hands-on activities where kids collect data. And then we gave them all kind of a shared experience in the game to discuss and reflect. But we also noticed a lot of things about teachers. A lot of our teachers, if they use games, they use them for practice, to practice content that has already been taught. It's a time filler. So the idea of using a game to do the teaching is really uncomfortable for a lot of teachers. What do I do while the kids are playing? If the game is teaching, what do I do? How do I support that? What's the discussion? How do we shape that? So the materials we created for Math Snacks, it took us equally as much effort to prepare support materials and to understand what teachers needed as it did to create the games. So here's an example. We created a video for every single one of our games to help teachers understand what gameplay looked like. I'm going to play just the first few seconds for you. This is Dr. Ten Stadford. He's our math consultant on Math Snacks.
The name of this game is Gate, and turn up your sound, because now is a time to make plenty of noise, and you can talk and you can listen to the sound and just play the game and see how it goes. What do we do when we're stuck? Yes, Jacob.
Ask a partner.
Ask a partner? Okay. What else can we do if we're stuck?
One of the similarities between math and gameplay is the value of perseverance. Kids need to learn that struggling is okay. It's okay if they don't get it right away. A kid playing a game will persevere and keep trying to figure it out. They don't need somebody standing there telling them what to do every minute. And we're looking for the same thing in math. We're looking for kids to develop strategies for what to do when they don't know what to do.
Isn't that
You
lovely?
don't just wait for somebody to come and
I
rescue you.
just love Ted. He articulated that so beautifully. So you'll notice even in that short clip, there were a lot of messages we gave, and those all came from observation of classroom use. The first, turn the sound up. I understand that teachers, when they've got 30 computers in a lab, want to turn the sound down and get people quiet. But when you get the sound down, the kids don't talk to each other. And you need the kids to talk to each other about the game so that the kids talk to each other about the math. So this is an example of some of the support we knew the teachers needed. So each of our games have a support video. All of our animations games, there's a teacher guide, there's a learner guide. Everything is available in English and in Spanish for the learner. We have a vocabulary guide. So an extensive amount of support materials for games. A game is just simply not enough anymore. And you'll find that what we learned is consistent with what others have learned. Lure of the Labyrinth is a really great game out of MIT. For pre-algebra. Their development mirrored ours. They were about a year ahead, and they learned the exact same things we did. In fact, Scott Osterwell and others have published some great findings already on what they've learned about the support that teachers need in the classroom. So in helping us in the implementation fight, it really isn't enough anymore to just build a game and have it accessible. What we're starting to see in one of the trends is to see large-scale distribution and partnerships. And BrainPop is a really good example of that. BrainPop is one of our partners. Now, BrainPop is very well known for Moby, and I have some flyers on this if you'd like. In the back as well. Moby and their vast education network. BrainPop made its name in animations in K-12. They do ESL, they have Spanish, I think they're doing a series in Yiddish now. Really beautiful animations to convey complex concepts. Well, they are starting with Game Up. Game Up is a curated space on BrainPop, it's free, where they go and collect all the great games that other people have done, such as ours, and Lure of the Labyrinth is on there, but they bring it into the construct of an environment for teachers. So all of our games are my babies and I love them, but I know that even Math Snacks is not enough for the 6th grade teacher. It's just 4 to 6 weeks of their instruction. They need stuff for the whole rest of the time. And so BrainPop has started curating those games so a teacher has one place to go to. But here's what's exciting as well. Here's a Ninja Kitchen, one of our other games, a health game. They've grouped it with other games. They tie them to animations. They create, if you don't create them for them, they create lesson plans for the teachers. So for our Math Snacks games, we created those, but they will do it if the developer doesn't. Discussion questions, dig it in lesson resources, clicks to go to learn more about that content. So it puts all of the games into a community of learners and into a context where the teacher has access to other content that he or she needs. That's BrainPop, brainpop.com. And then, of course, they have all the support materials for how to teach with games in the classroom. I'm so impressed, and they're one of our favorite partners. I love working with them. So Glass Labs Games is another. This is in beta. We're in one of their first 6 games that they selected. We selected just one of our Math Snacks games. So Glass Lab Games is doing the same thing, creating a curated space around similar content. Now, they are going to have a paid model where eventually classrooms or districts can subscribe and have access to all of the games that are part of Glass Labs Games. So our game is on there right now. There's 6 on there. What they are focusing on is certainly you have access to teaching materials as well, but Glass Labs is really hoping to help the teacher with assessment. Now, it's not just a dashboard with scores. That's not their goal. They are wanting to do meaningful assessment. So for Game Over Gopher, we went through, they have shout-outs and watch-outs, for example. So I have identified milestones in our games that track, that show kids have learned different things. If they have used all of the towers, if they have not used all of the towers, if they have worked in the negative quadrant, all of these different things so that a teacher can then go to a dashboard and see, which of my kids is struggling a little bit. And then they just know the next day to say, hey, let's sit down and work through this together. So Glass Lab Games is working hard to make assessment through gameplay an important part of the way that teachers are learning. Okay, so we need to rethink how we distribute. That's one of the things that we can do. That involves partnerships for distribution. There are several of them out there. In fact, we have a full-time person in our studio who just manages partnerships. And we don't sell our games. They're all for free online, just finding ways to help us distribute. BrainPop has already given us millions of plays for our games, which is more than we could have received by just hosting them off of our site. But we also know when we have games or when we use games, the support for parents, teachers, and learners is important, particularly with the renewed emphasis by Dweck and others on mind-based learning. It's really valuable to not hide the education in games. So many people say that, oh, with games you can hide the education. Why would you want to? You want kids to fully understand what it is that they're learning and why. All right, now this is another trend in game-based learning, and I will tell you this might be just a deeply held wish that I have, and not a trend, but we'll see. How many people here are graduate students? Wonderful, I'm so glad that you're here. So if you want to have a wonderful experience, if you think you will ever write a grant, sit on a review panel for NSF, NIH, USD, any of them, pick one of them, sit on a review panel. If you want to be simultaneously impressed at your colleagues and discouraged and eye-rolling, that is the way to do it. Actually, that's any committee where you get more than 5 faculty members in a group. You will simultaneously be impressed with their ability and your eyes will be exhausted from the eye-rolling. So grad students, it's not just the faculty on your committees, it's faculty everywhere. So, you know, I kind of think, you know what you call a group of like 5 or 6 faculty members? It's not a group or a herd or a gaggle, it's a concern. It's a concern of faculty members. Because faculty members, you know, we know stuff and we are well aware of it, right? So sitting on review panels, often we're seeing a lot more grants proposed in review projects now. There's kind of 2 schools of thought. The first is to try to explain what the idea is for the game. And the second is to clearly delineate what you want to teach with the game and articulate the process you will use for creating the game. That's the one I prefer, because I believe a design process is greater than an idea. I have never made a game that looked like I thought it was going to look when I started the process. It's an iterative process, right? We know that about the development of interactive tools. It is an iterative process. And I sat on a committee just a couple of weeks ago. For the people who tried in 15 pages to explain what the game was, people on the committee said, I don't think I understand how the game is played. Of course you don't understand how the game is played. You have 15 pages and it's on paper. How can you possibly understand how a game is played when you write about it? So this is my deeply held wish. This field of game-based learning is kind of viewed as a new phenomenon. I've been doing it for 20 years. It is not that new. You can go back and you can look, Zoombinis just had a Kickstarter. You can go back and look at a fabulous paper written in 1995 about math-based play, about Zoombinis. This is not a brand new field. And we know how to do these things now. We know design processes, and we know how to establish that. So for those of you who are working with game developers, who are game developers, get a design process. We no longer have to muddle through and figure it out as we go along. We can go and use methods that other people use. I want to talk about the world of Lexica. This is not one of our games. This is developed by Amplify. Shell Games, with Jesse Shell out of Pittsburgh, created it. The world of Lexica is fascinating. We talk about seat time for our games. So seat time is how long do we expect our player to sit and play with the game. So Night of the Living Dead, the credit score game that we're working on, we want that to be playable in a 50-minute period. We want the user to have different rounds, and so we see the seat time as 15 minutes. World of Lexica is designed to help kids start reading and to continue reading right at the crucial drop-off time, which is about 6th grade. That's when we lose our readers. And Lexica takes everything we know about readers and throws it all at them. So it teaches kids about mind-based learning. It gives them access to read books. It gives them exposure to their friends' books, knowing that their friends also read. It introduces them to characters. Everything we know about reading, they are putting into World of Lexica. World of Lexica is the single biggest investment in an educational game. And the seat time for this game is 3 years. They fully expect that players will play this game throughout the week actively for 3 years, from grade 6 to 9. Now, if you had asked me for a design document, or if you'd asked the team for a design document when they started this, could we have understood the game enough to fund it? No. And I know, I talked to the guys when they were developing it a few years ago, and they told me they were creating a game to get people reading, and I thought it was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard. Wouldn't a game take people away from the activity reading, I thought? Because they didn't really know what they were creating either. But they had a good design process. They knew exactly all of the goals for their learners, and they set to work at it. In fact, Jesse Schell just gave a great talk about it at GDC yesterday, if you want to learn more about the approach they used in designing it. So the world of Lexica, you play, it's a role-playing game, and you get to interact with all the characters of different books. Not only that, you get to read the books as part of the game. Right now, there are 350 books, text included, in the game. They eventually want to make that 1,200. And Justin Lights from Amplify, one of the developers, told me that he was on the subway and it was Christmas and he hadn't read, what is it, with the Ghost of Christmas Past and Christmas Carol. He hadn't read Christmas Carol. And he thought, oh, I'll read Christmas Carol. So he read Christmas Carol in the game. And the next day, one of the characters in the game interacted with him and said, I saw you read Christmas Carol. Did you notice what happened in chapter 2, et cetera, et cetera? And Justin said, I felt like I had found a friend who was reading the same book. And as many times as I have read the Christmas Carol, I went back to the book to look up some of the things this character was talking to me about. And it became a discussion with an AI simulated character about the book. And as you walk around Lexica, you get different superheroes. You might get, or superpowers. You might get an invisibility cloak from Harry Potter, who might then introduce you to a Harry Potter book to read. It's a fascinating, fascinating game that nobody could have explained at the beginning. The design process is greater than the idea. So how can we support design process? First, on review committees. Help your fellow reviewers understand that a design process is more valuable than a great idea, because the great idea is going to change. It should change. Certainly, as educational consultants, I like to tell game developers, use your educational consultants for more than just correlating to standards. Use your educational consultants as learning theorists, as people who understand learning, who can shape behavior, who understand what your users need, who know the things that are currently being taught other ways and how that's failing. Use your educational reps there, and I'm hoping that we in this community can serve that. And then, of course, certainly in our publications. If you have a game design process that you have used, that you have developed, publish it and put it out there and help other people realize that there are some great ones out there. Glass Labs just last week published an online guide, Glass Lab Game Design Handbook. It's available free online. Anybody can access it. Again, that's glasslabgames.org. We have published, Jesus Tres Palacios, who's sitting right there, he and I have published our design model twice. Once that goes through the design model that we use for any game, and then the second for applying the design model for a suite of games like we did in Math Snacks. Ours is not the only model out there, but the point is there are design models out there that we can use in this field. All right, I want to wear my parent hat. Those are my boys. Because I had a moment of inspiration as a developer in a very parent moment. And that was at my son's IEP. And one of the teachers asked me, what are your goals for your child's future? Well, I love talking about my kids. I'm like any parent, right? Oh, I know exactly for my child. I want my kids to, okay, well, I want them to go to college. Well, unless they don't go to college, because it's not for everybody, and there might be, okay, so they don't have to go to college, but I want them to have a high-paying job. Well, I don't have a high-paying job. I want them to have a job. I want them to have a job? No, okay. I want them to be traveled. I want them to see the world, unless they're engaged in another activity of equal value. That might happen later in their life. Okay, I want them to have the same beliefs as me. I want them to have a good person, except they can be a good person with different beliefs. Holy cow, what is it that I want for my kids? What do I want for their future? And it came down to this, for my kids, for your kids, for the kids I develop for. I want them to have this. I want them to be happy, healthy. I want them to be fulfilled. I want them to be safe. I want them to contribute to others. That's what I want for my kids. So how did I get those things? I feel very good at this point in my life because I feel I have those things. So how did I get them? How did I get from this girl in that fabulous hat to that? What happened in the transition that did that for me? Because when I was a kid on Nugget, if you go to all the people in charge of my education, my teachers, the principal, my 4-H leaders, my parents, at some point these things were all important to them, right? They wanted me to know my multiplication tables and my letters, colors, numbers, shape. They wanted me to name the presidents. They wanted me to write a formal letter. I mean, those are important skills that at some point they wanted me to master. But when I look at who I am as an adult, and I think of the skills that have really served me well, it's these skills. These are the things that have helped me, being resilient and inquisitive, being active in making decisions, being self-directed, being a problem solver, being capable, being self-aware. These are the skills that I think have helped me become happy, healthy, self-fulfilled, and safe. So, as a developer, I have to ask myself, am I creating educational tools that teach children to be these things? Because the red skills and the white skills were both really important, but those red skills were really easy to learn, comparatively speaking. We should not be putting the full thrust of game development and fancy doodads and iPads and technology and everything we have at our disposal to teach colors, letters, numbers, and shapes. If a child has anybody in their life that is trying or concerned to help them with school, they will pick up colors, letters, numbers, and shapes on their own. They do not need an $800 device to help them with that. So how do we help them learn these things? Because the truth is, there is what we learn, and there is how we learn it. And this isn't a talk on assessment. I don't want to get lost in assessment and what we're assessing. But so much of assessment is what we learn. When so much of the abilities that help our children become adults, is how they learn it. The process they use to learn it, the way they collaborate with other people to learn it, how they react to something they don't know the answer to, how they go about solving problems, how they investigate, how they value others around them. It's how we learn it. And game-based learning, which is expensive, I will tell you, it is expensive. It costs a lot of money for us to make a quality game. That money should go towards enhancing how we learn it. And I don't just mean with pixels and with battery power and an expensive device. I mean the process we are engaged in through which we do our learning. I want to talk about security theater. Anyone heard the term security theater? Okay, so security theater is the practice of investing in countermeasures intended to provide the feeling of improved security while doing little or nothing to actually achieve it. So this is, the idea you can carry 2 small toothpaste tubes on the airplane, but not one larger toothpaste tube, right? Or National Guards at the airport where you see National Guardsmen with rifles, right? That should something terrible happen at an airport, firing a semi-automatic weapon probably would not make the situation better, right? So it's the idea of security theater in that we create these measures that are kind of designed to help people feel like we got everything under control, but it actually, it may not be the right approach. So I want to play off security theater, and I want to talk about this concept, educational theater. I made this one up. And it's the practice of creating or using educational tools which seem as though they should be educational while not addressing the more crucial needs. This is rampant on the App Store. You go to the App Store and you look up educational games and software, and you're going to find flashcard apps. You're going to find, especially in licensed character-driven games, content that looks educational. And I think they do that bar and light because parents want to feel a little less guilty about using their iPad as a babysitter because, oh my gosh, I have to make dinner sometime, right? And so if I could just give my iPad to my child and say, here, oh, that looks educational. Okay, we're good. I'm sure the people who made that knew. Yeah, it's probably educational. It's educational theater. This becomes very clear when we look at a study by Joan Ganz-Cooney. Joan Ganz-Cooney Center, JGCC.org, I think. Fabulous, fabulous research. They just recently released something in how Latinos across the U.S. use technology. Really great research reports. This one was a study they did about all of the apps on the App Store that have to do with language and literacy. Okay, so these are all the things that are important in developing language and literacy. We have writing letters, grammar, reading comprehension, vocabulary, spelling, sight words, letter knowledge. But of all the apps on the store, what do they hit? Alphabet knowledge and letter sounds. Look at that. About 55 to 58% of all the apps teach what is a B and what sound does it make. Now, that's not harmful. It's not harmful, but it's being done very well in many other ways. It's educational theater, and it's easily copied. But storytelling, narrative, and reading comprehension, which I would argue is some of the most important components of literacy and really hard to teach well, is the least represented in the game store. That is crucially important, and it's difficult to teach. That is our responsibility. I talked last week to Kids Screen. I talked to people who work with characters and licensing, and I talked to them about educational theater because I told them I know how easy it is when you have a character and you want to put your character out in front of kids and you know the parents want something educational, so you take a look at what other apps are doing and then you do that with that character. Okay, I'm going to let them have a free pass. But they don't really know how to fix it, but we do. We academics, we researchers, we scholars, we know. We know what really needs to be taught. We know what isn't being taught well elsewhere. We know how to find out what isn't being taught well. We need to put that out there and help all the developers of game-based learning make sure we hit the right stuff. Of course, I love math games. This one is called Exponential Zombies. I was like, Exponential Zombies, sign me up. That sounds fabulous. Okay, so Exponential Zombies. The way you play Exponential Zombies is you match the blue number to the red number. And if you get it right, you fire a cannon. Woo! It's so exciting. Now, of course, the problem with this game is who's going to do well in this game? The people who already know how to do exponents, right? I mean, and if people really already understand how to do exponents, they're not going to waste their time playing Exponential Zombies because they already know it. This is what we see regularly in game-based learning, and this is not game-based learning. This is educational dressing of a boring activity. We think math looks like this, counting, that's what we see over and over on apps. Or 4 times 9 is what? You know the answer? Do you know the answer? I'll give you a star if you know the answer. You don't know it? Okay, what if a ninja asks you, do you know it now? Penguin? No. An alien? Do you know it now? That's what we see in so many game-based learning. But what's more important about that is not to quiz and see how quick you are at being able to respond to the question, what does 4 times 9? The most important part of this is that you understand that 4 times 9 is actually 4 sets of 9. Or 9 sets of 4. And if we take the time to make sure you understand how this works, that means when you are asked what 2/3 times 3/4 is, you will know how to solve that problem. Because you conceptually understand what 4 times 9 is. And you know then that that is 2/3 of 3/4. And if you draw the picture, 2/3 of 3/4 is a half. And it doesn't matter if it's 2/3 of 3/4 or if it's 3/4 of 2/3, you solve the problem the same way. This is how you build conceptual understanding. A friend of mine, Darren Karstens, he also makes great math games, says learning is fun and our job is to not screw that up. I know I'm preaching to the choir. I know, I have people in this room who are in the games simulation SIGs, who are just in that meeting, who are like, preach it, sister, you know, games can be better. I know, what I wanted to do today was not preach to the choir. What I wanted to do today was to help us find strategies we can take out of this room to improve the game-based learning field. And the first thing is to tackle the hard stuff, to move us beyond educational theater, to add on to our existing objectives, thinking not just what they're learning, but the way that they are learning it, and to go through that long iterative process to make sure that way is a good one. And then, of course, we don't settle for educational theater. This is an important revelation for me. The reason we all do educational theater isn't because I'm not capable, or I'm lazy, or I'm not smart. It's because the natural inclination to teach things is to tell people what you know. And we do that in beautiful ways with great characters and fun sounds. It takes a lot of motivation to move beyond that. So I have to end with a quote of Piaget, because I'm a fan of constructivism. Are we forming children who are only capable of learning what is already known? And I would say in the field of game-based learning, we can move beyond this. We should move beyond this. We should do better for our learners in using games for that content which is hardest, most difficult, and can be the most engaging if handled correctly. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have, or start a discussion, or stand awkwardly in silence while we all look at each other in a weird situation. Yes? Yes, can I post my slides? Thanks, I'd be happy to. I'm not sure what the process for posting slides here is. Dave, do you know what that is? Into the site panel? Okay. Okay, so we'll put them up onto the academic experts. I'll figure out how to do that. I'll post them up as a PDF. I use Keynote, and so sometimes those are difficult for other people to use on PCs, but I'll post them up as PDFs. I'd be happy to. Any other questions? Yes?
is, wow. Um, you had mentioned that good game development costs money. And for those of us who are not in the STEM field, who may be in the social studies, humanities, literacy, there aren't those big grants necessarily out there, or there aren't as many, and the competition's really tough. Recommendations for how to develop a good process, a good game.
I was in Washington, D.C., and they were showing games, and the people from like the humanities and the arts, they said, oh, I wish we'd get some game proposals. So the people that are in the humanities and the arts and the social studies, they really want games. I'm not saying, you know, that you need a lot of money to do anything good, but I'm saying there is a lot of money available, and the people that are in social studies told me, they said, I wish somebody would do what we were doing in MassNax in social studies and in other places. And it was like the standard, you know, the Department of Education people that do funding in social studies, and they were really anxious to get really good game proposals. So that's true.
One of the lovely things that have happened with this presidential administration is he appointed a Office of Strategic something for games. I forget what it was. Constance Steinkuhler was the first head of it, and now it's somebody else. And one of the things that they have done and been actively engaged in is they pulled together 10 universities to kind of form an advisory panel to help all of the different offices start looking at game-based learning. So you're right, STEM has really been leading it. Thank goodness NSF was one of the first to really start seeing some of that innovation. It's not as popular, and I'll tell you, I do whatever games are out there. I'll do whatever kind of content. I mean, we actually made a game on cooking rice to the proper temperature for Chinese food service workers. So when I say we do a wide range of content, I mean we do a wide range of content. But I think we are starting to see that break in all the other fields, and I think people who want to apply for grants in the other fields now can start putting the word game up front and center, and all of the research still applies and how it can be effective. Something else to keep in mind, I know those of us in academics, we look so much at the grants, but the SBIR and STTIR programs are really amazing. The trick with those is it has to go to a small company, a small business, or STTR can be a small business partnering with the university if the university does 40% of the work. And those usually, I was just looking at one that was $225,000 for a 6-month development cycle to develop a prototype. So if you can find some partners to develop with, some of those SBIR, STTRs are a nice way to kind of kickstart some of the innovation on games as well.
Yes, I have a question about, I'm currently working with soon-to-become student teachers, and I think this will be like a great tool to teach them about technology. The problem that I see is like you mentioned, you're like in a separate department, right? You're not working with students.
Right,
And,
I'm not teaching.
and actually, I am also from MMSU.
Oh, wonderful.
Yes, so probably I would like to see, have you known about any way of engaging student teachers or other students into doing something like this that is not too complicated, you know, and ways they can relate and find it useful to learn too.
I would love to hear if there's anybody else here who is teaching pre-service or in-service teachers on how to use games. I'm teaching a class this fall, just, you know, for fun, for undergrads, and what I'm really trying to figure out is how can I guide teachers through that process of analyzing games, determining if they're good, and reviewing the materials that are out there. Ultimately, in the class, I think I want to have students develop materials for teaching. One of the challenges teachers have with games is you can't just review a game in 5 minutes and get a sense for the gist of it. So you really have to put a big investment in time in a game, and then you discover 2 hours in it's no good for your class. It's sort of frustrating. So one of the tricks we've done is we have short overview videos of our games that talk about that help teachers watch the overview to see what the game is like, what it teaches, how it changes, what the different levels do. So that's a strategy we've used for teachers. But as far as helping pre-service teachers analyze games and use them, I would love recommendations. Has anybody here experienced that or have a good strategy for that? Ooh, grad students, take note. Rich dissertation topic there.
I think they're here to figure out why and how to do that from you.
Oh, I've totally wasted their time. I don't know. Okay, yeah.
I work with faculty in particular who want to use more simulations and games in their classrooms, but it seems like most everything we can find is rooted in K-12. Do you have any advice or any help to guide me to look at the right or other places for that kind of gaming or simulation?
There was someone in the Games and Simulation SIG who said that they were working with faculty and integrating games. Is that person here? Okay, tell us, what do you know about this topic? Because again, I'm going to disappoint you. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I'm in the research phase as well, and we are trying to partner with the faculty to develop a math game at the university level. So I've developed a prototype using Project Spark right now, and at this point we are looking to partner with developers, and I'm really searching for developers right now, along with the person responsible for my department. And yeah, that's.
Yeah, one of my goals, one of my dream games that I'd like to do is I really want to do a game to help college students with statistics, or also legislators understand the difference between causality and correlation, but that's just a dream I have. But, and you know, we know that the college classroom is usually one of the slowest to accept new teaching technology. So if there is anybody else who has experience in that.
I don't have experience, and this is mostly with non-digital games and simulations, so not as flashy and shiny, but I just read a book called Minds on Fire that I could not recommend enough if that's the sort of thing that you're looking for.
Minds on Fire. Awesome.
Minds on Fire, yes. How role immersion games reinvent college. If you don't mind, though, I'd like to springboard that and ask a question. As I said, this book focuses on games that they're not on a computer, they're not on a tablet. You've told us about how exciting games are and you know what we need from games. I'm curious to know your thoughts about to realize this potential. Do all of these games need to be on a screen?
Oh gosh, no. No,
Okay.
of course. I don't think there's anything magical about a pixel and electricity and battery power. In fact, what's kind of nice about that is the flashy new sexiness of games is starting to see resurgence of traditional games and games. Some of my favorite, Mary Flanagan out of Drexel? No. Where is Mary Flanagan from? Oh. Anyway, she has these amazing games. So she has been doing a lot for STEM and other where she does card games. So she had one card game which is Awkward Moments. So the goal of Awkward Moments, so has anyone played Apples to Apples? You know, I put down like a green card that says like hilarious, and then everyone has red cards, and they have to pick of all their red cards, President Bush, George Clooney, you know, all the cards, they have to pick the one that's hilarious, and then you judge what you think is hilarious. So she and her team, Tilt Factor Games is the name of her company, they made a game called Awkward Moments, which the awkward moment is like I sat on a ketchup package, right? Or the guy I liked talked to me in the hallway. And then you have all these cards that are your reaction to what do? I eat an entire pie. I tell all my friends online what the problem is. I laugh out loud. So she designed this game, Awkward Moments, and the goal of Awkward Moments was actually to encourage women in STEM fields. And she said, you know, we got together and we decided that the problem with women in STEM fields wasn't the women who needed to go into the STEM fields. The problem in women in STEM fields is so many people have an unconscious bias about the appropriateness of women in these fields. So they created 2 decks of Awkward Moments to test it. And in one of the decks, they just swapped out 10% of those awkward moments with experiences that have a slight gender bias, such as I went to buy a camera and the salesperson asked if you could talk to my dad or husband. And swapped out the decks, put them in a bunch of groups of different people, and what they found was the groups who played the decks that had the slight bias in some of the awkward moments. First off, the groups didn't tell the difference. There was no different in enjoyment of the game. There was no different in perceived educational goals of the game. They all just thought they were playing. This is for 6th graders. But the kids who played the deck that had the tilted, awkward moments, then she gave them a second activity and said, okay, you're gonna help us cast a video game. Here's all our actors and actresses. Here's all the jobs I need filled, pilot, secretary, all these different things. And the people who played the deck that had the tilted awkward moments were something like 70% more likely to put women in the science-based fields in the game where they were casting it. It was amazing. And that is playing a card game. So she has another one called Buffalo. She has one on Kickstarter now called Monarch. So I think I'm a huge fan of traditional gameplay, and it's something we encourage our developers to do in our games lab. And in many ways, it solves a lot of accessibility problems because you don't have to get the computer and plug it in. So, any other questions? Yes.
So I am one of those small businesses that partners with universities for STTRs.
Oh, wonderful.
We're in the process on our phase 2, so we're getting up to finishing some of our games, and I'm trying to figure out how do we differentiate ourselves from the education theater when we go to try to compete with all those numbers that you saw up on that screen.
How do you differentiate yourself in making the argument or in selling the game? Gosh, how to sell and get into schools. I'm hoping that in a year I could come back and talk to you and even be a little smarter about that, because that is such a challenge we have. Our MassNext games, everything's free online. Everything's available free online, and 3 of those things were turned into apps. And we have been experimenting with charging for the apps. Now, NSF covered the cost of the games. Of course, they aren't covering continued maintenance of it. My goal is I'd like to just make enough money off my games to maintain them post-funding. That's just, I mean, this is the part where businesses can hate me, because I'm not actually trying to make money. I'm just trying to sustain. And how to get it is a huge question. One of the reasons I'm so excited about Glass Labs is actually a developer of educational materials as well, and they were working with NASA on some STEM games, and they found this problem. So what they are trying to do is to see if through a subscription model through districts, they can actually monetize those games to return money back to developers. This is their grand experiment. I'm hoping that that is the case. One of the other trends we're seeing in apps and on the game store is we're starting to see a bounce back from the 99-cent app. It used to be all the apps are 99%, and I forget the numbers. I could look it up if anyone's interested, but it was something like only the top 4,000 apps in the game store are making $40,000 a year or more. And there's over 1 million apps on the game store. The top 4,000 are making $40,000 a year. So we're starting to see a bounce back on the App Store where apps are no longer 99 cents. We're starting to see where they're free, or they have characters, people who have a monetization goal, who want to get their characters, they can afford to put those things out there free. So how do we help people value the good stuff? I wish we could make that happen. I think part of that is to help educate parents. One of the things that I think is important is in a game or in an app to have about the learning. Parents are busy. We're making PB&J sandwiches, and we're untangling slinkies, and we're doing really crucial development things. But we don't necessarily know what executive functioning means or why that's important in development. And when we have math that's taught differently than the way we learned it, we don't know what to do with that. So I think part of the role we can have is to help educate teachers and parents and kids, especially the parents and kids, in the language of learning and help them understand why this learning is valuable. That's the only strategy I have pulled out so far to help get the consumers to understand that just because it looks educational doesn't mean it is. And just because it doesn't look like it isn't doesn't mean it's not. That's enough double negatives for one response.
So where do we find these games? You referenced they were online, they were free, the ones that you've developed?
Yeah, so MassNext, massnext.org or com, we bought both URLs. You can grab the bookmark for that on the way out if you like it. So you can go to learninggameslab.org to find any of the games we did. Glass Lab games, those 6 that they have are available now. It's free currently. And brainpop.com for Game Up. All of their games are currently free on there. Possibly, if we don't brand really heavily. If you go to learninggameslab.org, you can find all of ours there. All right, and yeah, grab a bookmark. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you all so much for coming, and gosh, have a great, I'm so disappointed I have another booking tomorrow in Salt Lake, so I can't stay for the conference. I'm so bummed that I can't stay for Jim G on Friday. He just is the father of so much of what we know about game-based learning. That should be a great talk. So have a great conference, and hey, go forth and do good work.